The Discovery commander, Elena Vasquez, had spent 15 years exploring the darkest corners of space, but nothing prepared her for what appeared on her sensors that morning. The UES Pioneer drifted through the void between solar systems, its crew conducting routine surveys of uncharted space when everything changed. The sensors picked up something that violated every law of physics she knew. An object the size of a small moon hung motionless in space, generating energy signatures that her instruments couldn't properly measure. She stood on the bridge of her exploration vessel and watched the main screen with growing disbelief. The readings showed impossible numbers that kept changing every few seconds. Her science officer, Marcus Chen, worked frantically at his station, running diagnostic after diagnostic on their equipment. Every test came back the same. Their instruments were working perfectly, which meant the impossible readings were real. The object appeared to be a ship, but unlike any vessel humanity had ever constructed. Its hull seemed to shimmer and shift as if it existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Strange patterns of light danced across its surface, forming symbols that hurt to look at directly. The ship was massive, easily 10 times larger than the biggest dreadnought in Earth's fleet. Yet according to their mass readings, it weighed almost nothing, as if it barely existed in their reality at all. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez controlled the navigation systems with steady hands despite her obvious excitement. She had joined the crew fresh from the academy just 2 years ago, but her skills had already proven invaluable on several missions. Now she guided the Pioneer closer to the mysterious vessel with careful precision. The unknown ship didn't respond to their approach, showing no signs of active weapons or defensive systems. It simply hung there in the darkness, waiting. Chief Engineer Thomas Wright studied the energy readings with growing amazement. The power source of the strange ship defied conventional understanding. It wasn't using fusion reactors or antimatter drives or any propulsion system known to human science. Instead, it seemed to be drawing energy directly from the quantum foam of space itself, tapping into the fundamental forces of the universe in ways that shouldn't be possible for another 1,000 years of technological advancement. Dr. Yuki Tanaka served as both the ship's physician and its expert on theoretical physics. She had published papers on exotic matter and temporal mechanics that most scientists considered too radical to take seriously. Now she stared at proof that her wildest theories might actually be true. The mysterious vessel showed signs of temporal displacement, as if it didn't quite belong in their present moment. Parts of it seemed to flicker in and out of existence, phasing between different states of reality. The crew gathered around the command console as more data streamed in from their sensors. Communications specialist David Park attempted to establish contact, using every frequency and protocol in their database. The ship remained silent, but their scans revealed something extraordinary. Human language appeared on parts of the hull, mixed with symbols that looked like evolved versions of Earth's writing systems. Registration numbers were visible but made no sense. They indicated construction dates that wouldn't occur for another 300 years. Commander Vasquez made the decision that would change human history forever. She ordered her crew to prepare for boarding operations. The mysterious vessel represented either the greatest discovery or the greatest threat humanity had ever encountered. Either way, they needed answers. The boarding team would consist of herself, Marcus Chen, Sarah Rodriguez, and Security Chief Robert Kim. They would enter the impossible ship and learn its secrets. As they suited up in the equipment bay, each member of the team felt the weight of the moment. They were about to step into something that challenged everything they believed about time, space, and humanity's place in the universe. Robert Kim checked his weapons, though he suspected conventional arms would be useless against whatever technology created this vessel. Marcus Chen calibrated his scientific instruments to record every possible piece of data. Sarah Rodriguez prepared portable navigation beacons to mark their path through the ship. The Pioneer moved into docking position, and the crew watched in amazement as the mysterious vessel responded. A section of its hull simply dissolved, creating an opening exactly the right size for their docking collar. It was as if the ship had been expecting them, waiting for this exact moment to reveal itself. The docking procedure completed without any input from the Pioneer's crew. The ships connected with perfect precision, guided by some intelligence within the mysterious vessel. Commander Vasquez led her team through the airlock, their boots making no sound as they stepped onto the deck of the impossible ship. The interior was even more extraordinary than the exterior. The walls appeared to be made of living metal that pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm like breathing. Corridors stretched away in directions that seemed to violate three-dimensional geometry. The air itself felt different, charged with energy that made their skin tingle through their environmental suits. They moved deeper into the vessel, following corridors that rearranged themselves as they walked. Behind them, passages sealed and reformed. Ahead, new paths opened, guiding them toward some unknown destination. Sarah Rodriguez tried to map their route, but her equipment showed that they were somehow moving through space that didn't properly exist. They had walked only 100 meters, but the ship's interior seemed to extend for kilometers in every direction. The lighting came from everywhere and nowhere, a soft golden glow that emanated from the very structure of the ship. As they moved, the light adjusted to their presence, brightening where they looked and dimming behind them. Marcus Chen's sensors went wild with readings that his equipment couldn't properly interpret. The ship was scanning them just as intensely as they were scanning it, learning about them with every step they took. They entered a vast chamber that could only be the command center. The room was spherical with no defined floor or ceiling. Gravity seemed to flow in multiple directions, allowing surfaces to be walked on that should have been walls or ceilings. In the center floated a chair that looked more grown than built, constructed from the same living metal as the ship itself. Holographic displays filled the air around it, showing star charts, technical diagrams, and text in languages that hurt their brains to perceive. Commander Vasquez approached the command chair cautiously. As she drew near, the displays began to change, adapting to her presence. The text shifted, becoming more recognizable, though still beyond true comprehension. She could see fragments of meaning, pieces of words that might have evolved from English over centuries of linguistic drift. One phrase appeared repeatedly across multiple displays, growing clearer with each iteration until she could finally read it. Temporal refuge protocol activated. The chair itself seemed to beckon her, and against her better judgment she sat down. Immediately the ship responded. Information flooded into her mind, not through her eyes or ears but directly into her consciousness. She saw visions of Earth's future centuries from now. Humanity had spread across the galaxy, mastering technologies that seemed like magic. But something had gone terribly wrong. A threat beyond imagination had emerged, something that consumed entire civilizations and left nothing but void in its wake. The truth unveiled. The visions continued flooding Commander Vasquez's mind as her team watched in concern. She saw humanity's colonies falling one by one to an enemy that existed partially outside normal space-time. Traditional weapons were useless against beings that could phase through different dimensions at will. Earth's future scientists had developed this ship and others like it as humanity's last hope. They were temporal arcs, sent back through time to prepare earlier generations for the coming storm. Marcus Chen monitored the commander's vital signs as she remained connected to the ship's consciousness. Her brain activity spiked to levels that should have been fatal, yet she showed no signs of distress. The ship was somehow protecting her even as it downloaded centuries of knowledge directly into her neurons. Around them, the command center transformed, walls becoming transparent to reveal the true scope of the vessel. They could see hundreds of decks filled with technology beyond their comprehension. The ship's name revealed itself through the connection. Kronos Defender, the 5th of 12 vessels sent back through time. Each ship had been targeted at a specific era, designed to arrive when humanity would be ready to understand and utilize its technology. But temporal mechanics were imperfect, and the Kronos Defender had arrived 50 years early. It had waited, dormant and hidden, until the right humans found it. The Pioneer's crew hadn't discovered the ship by accident. The ship had allowed itself to be found. Sarah Rodriguez explored the other stations in the command center, while the commander remained connected. Each console responded to her touch, displaying information in gradually more comprehensible formats. She found navigation systems that could plot courses through dimensions humans hadn't discovered yet. The ship didn't just travel through space. It could move through time, slip between parallel realities, and even exist in multiple locations simultaneously. The technology was so advanced it seemed more like sorcery than science. Robert Kim investigated what appeared to be the ship's defensive systems. The weapons weren't guns or missiles, but something far more sophisticated. They could manipulate fundamental forces, creating localized alterations in reality itself. One system could age enemy vessels 10,000 years in seconds, reducing them to cosmic dust. Another could trap opponents in temporal loops, forcing them to repeat the same moment endlessly. The defensive shields didn't block attacks. They shifted the ship slightly out of phase with reality, allowing enemy fire to pass harmlessly through. Dr. Tanaka discovered the medical bay, though calling it that seemed inadequate. The facility could do more than heal injuries or cure diseases. It could rewrite human DNA, enhance biological capabilities, and even back up and restore human consciousness. The technology could extend human life indefinitely, upgrade the human brain to process information at quantum speeds, and grant abilities that current humans would consider superhuman. But everything came with warnings about gradual adaptation. Too much change too quickly would destroy the human mind. Thomas Wright found the engineering section and nearly wept at what he saw. The ship's power source was a contained singularity that existed in a state of controlled temporal flux. It generated infinite energy by recycling the same particles through a closed temporal loop, violating conservation of energy through clever manipulation of time itself. The propulsion system could fold space, create wormholes, or simply convince the universe that the ship had always been at its destination. The technology made their most advanced theories look like cave paintings. Commander Vasquez finally disconnected from the ship's consciousness and collapsed into the chair, her mind reeling from the information overload. She had seen humanity's future, both its incredible achievements and its desperate struggle for survival. The enemy they would face was called the Void Hunters, beings from a universe where different physical laws applied. They consumed reality itself, leaving nothing but emptiness in their wake. In the future, humanity had barely survived their first encounter, losing 60% of all human colonies in a war that lasted decades. The ship had been sent back with more than just technology. It carried the complete history of the war, tactical data on fighting an enemy that existed partially outside normal space, and blueprints for weapons that could harm beings made of living entropy. But more importantly, it carried a message of hope. Humanity had survived in the original timeline, though at terrible cost. With centuries of preparation, armed with future knowledge and technology, they could do better. They could save billions of lives that would otherwise be lost. But the knowledge came with a terrible burden. The crew now knew that every decision they made would ripple through time, potentially changing the future in unpredictable ways. They could accidentally prevent their own timeline from existing, create paradoxes that might unravel reality itself, or worse, alert the Void Hunters to humanity's existence earlier than in the original timeline. The ship's AI, a consciousness far beyond anything in their era, would guide them. But the ultimate decisions would remain human. As the crew absorbed this revelation, the ship began to transform around them. Sections that had been dormant came alive, revealing training facilities where humans could learn to use future technology, manufacturing bays that could produce materials that wouldn't be invented for centuries, and databases containing the sum of human knowledge from 300 years in the future. The ship wasn't just a weapon. It was a university, a factory, and a fortress all in one. The Kronos Defender selected Commander Vasquez as its primary operator, creating a neural link that would allow her to command its systems with thought alone. But it made clear that the ship belonged to all humanity. The technology and knowledge it carried would need to be shared carefully, introduced gradually to avoid panic or misuse. Some nations might try to use the future technology for conquest rather than preparation. The crew would have to be wise in choosing who to trust with humanity's future. Marcus Chen asked the question they were all thinking: if they accepted this responsibility, if they took command of the Kronos Defender and began preparing humanity for the coming war, would they still be the same people? The ship's response was gentle but honest. They would be enhanced, evolved, and changed in ways they couldn't fully understand yet, but they would remain human at their core, keeping the qualities that allowed humanity to survive against impossible odds: creativity, determination, and the ability to hope even in the darkest moments. The decision wasn't really a choice. They couldn't ignore what they now knew, couldn't pretend they hadn't seen humanity's future hanging in the balance. One by one, each crew member placed their hand on the command console, accepting their role as guardians of humanity's timeline. The ship responded by fully activating, its systems coming online with a harmony that sounded almost like singing. Throughout the vessel, lights blazed to life and machinery that had slept for decades began to hum with purpose. As the Kronos Defender fully awakened, it sent a signal across space and time. a message to the other temporal arcs that the preparation had begun. Somewhere in the past and future, other crews were making the same choice, accepting the same burden. Together, they would forge a new timeline, one where humanity would be ready when the Void Hunters arrived. The war that had nearly destroyed humanity in the original timeline would still come, but this time, humanity would not be caught unprepared. Commander Vasquez stood from the command chair and looked at her crew, her friends who had just become humanity's first temporal guardians. They had entered the ship as explorers and were leaving as soldiers in a war that wouldn't begin for centuries. But they were also teachers, preparing their species for a threat beyond current human imagination. The weight of that responsibility was crushing, but the hope of saving billions of lives made it bearable. The Kronos Defender detached from the Pioneer and properly revealed itself for the first time, dropping the stealth fields that had hidden its true nature. The ship was beautiful and terrible, a perfect fusion of organic curves and geometric precision. It represented the absolute peak of human achievement, a reminder of what humanity could become when faced with extinction. As news of the discovery spread across human space, the timeline began to shift, history rewriting itself around this moment when humanity learned its future and chose to fight for it.